answering, starting with this problem. So and there's the last one. All right. So it says Abercrombie and Finch have the following financial statement information. It gives us, I'm going to show you in the end how this could end up reading. It says we have ending inventory and then balances, and it gives us 3 numbers and then 3 dates. And then it says included in those were in transit balances, and then gives us 3 dates. Okay? And then it says inventory in transit is considered to be all merchandise owned by Abercrombie and Finch that has not yet been received at Abercrombie and Finch. Was the inventory in transit sold to Abercrombie and Finch as FOB shipping point or FOB destination? So we have to decide which way is it. So this part right here is key. What's the answer? I got a hand going up, so were you going to answer for us? Who was my last hand? No? All right, who wants to answer the question? What's my answer? I got too many things open up. Does anybody know? You got 50-50 shot. Is it FOB shipping?
I want to throw it out there. I put shipping point. But,
okay. And then if it's shipping point, who actually owns the inventory? Do you remember?
It's the seller, right?
It's the seller, right, until it reaches the dock. So in this case, the inventory is sold to Abercrombie and Finch. We want to know. So it's going to Abercrombie and Finch. So if it was sold shipping point, that means it would be the person who sold it to Abercrombie. It would not be included in Abercrombie's inventory, correct? Is that what you wanted to say?
Right, because I'm looking at my notes from when we did this last week. It was saying that the destination was the sale that's recorded when the goods reach their destination, and then that's when it's owned by the customer.
That is correct. Once it hits the destination, and when it's shipping point, it's as soon as it leaves the dock. That is correct. So that's what I'm clarifying. So what you're trying to say is that as soon that shipping point, sorry, I'm clarifying myself. Shipping point, as soon as it leaves the dock, it becomes that of the person who actually bought it, not the person who sold it. The inventory, because what you just said there is correct. That shipping point, as soon as it leaves the dock, it becomes the buyer, not the seller. And then destination stays with the buyer. Actually, I just said it backwards. Let's try that again.
Because it says the customer on
right.
Destination.
Yes, the customer. I just said it backwards. So on destination, right here, it's going to stay with the individual, okay, who is selling it all the way until it hits today's destination. So this stays okay, all the way and hit on shipping point, it goes directly to the buyer as soon as it leaves the dock. So in this case, if you said FOB shipping point, as soon as it left the dock, it became Abercrombie's inventory. And what they said right here, inventory in transit is considered to be owned by Abercrombie. So you actually had the right answer.
Okay,
is that how you interpreted it?
That's the part, yeah, that last sentence.
Yep.
Where it was saying that it was owned by them. So if they own it, that makes them the seller. Is the way that I had interpreted that.
Well, actually, no, they were the buyer. They were not the seller.
That's the way that my mind.
Okay, so this I know.
That's the seller shipping department going to them.
So they are the buyer, and they are buying it from somebody. And as soon as they bought it, it became their inventory because they bought it FOB shipping point. As soon as it left whoever they bought it from, it became their inventory. So Abercrombie is the buyer. And as soon as they bought it from, and I don't know who they'd be buying from, but as soon as Abercrombie bought their goods, as soon as it left that dock, it became their inventory. Because they bought it FOB shipping point.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, the way that my mind came to that conclusion was different based off of what I was reading.
And one of the things that I think makes this even harder is all this information here doesn't matter. All those numbers, and that's why I like to do this problem, is because, not to confuse you on the inside, but because I want you guys to see all that stuff that you can sometimes see in a multiple choice problem sometimes doesn't matter at all. You got to look and you got to read, and you got to read the last sentence here to see what's the question. Was the inventory in transit sold to? And see, I think that's what you missed there. It was sold to Abercrombie. How was it sold to them? Was it sold FOB shipping point, or was it sold FOB destination? And it was sold shipping point because as soon as they bought it, they're the buyer, it became part as their inventory. And it became their responsibility.
I guess my question to that is off of the explanation that I'm looking at in the screen, the PowerPoint that you had up last week. Like, I guess how would I come to that conclusion based off of that explanation? Because it says the sale is recorded when the goods leave the seller's shipping department.
Okay, and that's what it is. As soon as it left the seller, now in this case, we don't know who the seller is, okay? But as soon as it leaves the seller, okay, right here, it became Abercrombie's. I can't spell Abercrombie, I don't think. How close was I? Ooh, that's pretty good. All right, so it became, that's what we're saying, FOB shipping point. Abercrombie is the buyer. As soon as it left the seller's dock, FOB shipping point, it became Abercrombie's, and it went into their inventory. That is FOB shipping point.
Okay.
So when I wrote buyer here, that's Abercrombie. And so they took possession of the inventory, right? If it would have been FOB destination, then it would have been this other person that they're not mentioning who it is. You know, whoever.
And that's what we were referring to as the customer.
Huh? What was that?
That's who we were referring to as the customer.
No, well, Abercrombie's the customer. Abercrombie's buying this stuff.
Okay.
Abercrombie is the one who is buying it. See, right here, it's kind of, let me erase it. Abercrombie is the one that is buying the goods. So they're buying from, a third party that's making all their wonderful clothes, right? And so they're buying it from this other individual who is the seller. I mean, you can look at him as a customer, but they're looking at Abercrombie as the customer. Then Abercrombie gets all the goods and we go and buy it from them. So there's actually like a three-person. You got the seller, you got Abercrombie, and then you got us, right? So Abercrombie gets it from somebody, and then they sell it to us. And that's really sloppy, I apologize. So here the seller is selling to Abercrombie, and they're selling it FOB destination. Oh, shipping point, you said. FOB shipping point. Because Abercrombie is including it in their inventory. And accordingly, they're probably paying the shipping. Whoever that seller is. And I have no idea if Abercrombie clothes are made overseas or not. Probably. But
It's recorded when the goods leave the seller's shipping department. Okay.
does anybody else have questions on that?
The answer is shipping points.
The answer is shipping point, yes. I know they both kind of got underlined there. On slides, but I want to definitely focus on the bigger part of this and not the details of the slides that you guys can go look at later through other videos, and just focus on the parts that I think are going to be harder, because we're dealing with inventory and we're dealing with the management of inventory and trying to make sure we have, the right quality, quantity, cost at all times. We are looking at the merchandise side, all right? I got to undo this, sorry. We are looking at the merchandise side. So we are always, for right now, at managerial accounting, you guys will get into a little bit more of this, and you will focus on raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods. And that's when you got to look at, how much do you charge for an item? If you charge too much, then people won't buy it. If you charge too little, you won't make enough money. We're not worried about that. This class, we're looking at just merchandise inventory, how much we're going to charge for that inventory right now. Okay, and then cost of goods sold. All right, now we've looked at this last, but it's been a week and you took a test, so just kind of a reminder, inventory goes on the balance sheet, cost of goods sold goes on the income statement, and then gives us that wonderful gross profit that we're wanting to see that high number at. Our two statements that we have on looking at things is periodic and perpetual. Beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory is how we look at it from a periodic standpoint, because we don't know what our cost of goods sold is, because we don't know we don't have a way of counting it. Perpetual, we know what it is, so we just flip-flop them. Now, in Chapter 7, we will always assume it's a periodic type of system, only because it's much harder from your standpoint to do a perpetual, so we use a periodic. Other than that, everything else stays the same. Now, I want to remind you, I'm going to write them here real quick, and then we'll look at this problem. I want to remind you of the two formulas that we had. Hopefully you remember when we had beginning inventory plus purchases. And I added, as well as one of the slides, cost of goods available for sale. And then we subtracted cost of goods sold to give us ending inventory, which is what we just saw on the other slide, with the exception of the fact that we added that cost of goods available for sale, which you'll find handy in a few minutes. We also used sales minus cost of goods sold to give us gross profit. Right. Both those formulas you're going to use a lot in this chapter. So if I was standing in front of a board and you guys were sitting there tonight, instead of us doing it like this, I would write those both on the board, and those would not disappear, because we would be using them the rest of the night, and I'd just be writing numbers next to them and erasing it and writing numbers. I can't do that, obviously. So looking at this problem right here, a company has 5 units of an inventory that they bought at $10. They buy 20 more at $10, and then they sell 15 units. Now, this problem, if you take a second, isn't very complicated, mainly because they bought items at $10 and they bought other items at $10. So to figure out the cost of the items isn't very difficult, because they all cost $10. That's not typical. So this is how we want to learn to set things up. And this is what you will see me doing when we start looking at problems. You look at your beginning inventory times the cost to get your 50. Your purchases times the cost to get your 200. That gives you your 25 at 250. So that's your cost of goods available for sale. All right. Now in this case, we know what we sold. We sold 15 units. All right. We also know what's left, because they didn't tell us how much we sold those items at. Whichever way you want to do it. We know that we have 10 items left because we sold 15. Those 10 items are worth $10, so therefore our cost of goods sold is $150. All right? That's using the one method. We put it out here knowing that we sold 15 at $10, because everything is $10 in this problem. We get the same answers. Notice here we got 100. Here we got 100. Well, this problem was pretty easy because everything costs $10. That's not typical. And so that's what we're going to learn about in this chapter, is how do we figure out either the ending inventory or the cost of goods sold when we have multiple prices for items in our inventory. So we have 4 different types of inventory costing methods. All right, specific identification we are going to use in high dollar low inventory. All right. So high dollar, low inventory means it's going to be something like high-end jewelry. It's going to be cars, not the cars we're driving, but high-end cars. It's going to be airplanes. It's going to be things that are made custom design that you are going to want to keep track of exactly how much they cost. Now we're going to do a couple examples here. They're not good examples for specific identification, but you'll get the idea of how it works. I will tell you right now, you have a homework problem that is a pain in the rear end. Don't spend a lot of time on the specific ID part of the problem. Do the rest of the problem. Give it a try. If you can do it, it goes into 2/3 of this and 1/3 of that, and then later in the month, 2/3 and 1/3. I round up on your homework, so it will not count against you on that problem. Okay, first in, first out means that your first one in the door is the cost of the first one out. Okay, that's typically how they abbreviate that. It's called FIFO. All right, just like it's spelled, FIFO. All right, first one in the door is the first one out. And then obviously, LIFO, last one in is the cost of the first one out. And then weighted average is kind of the smoothing aspect. And you're going to take the cost of goods available for sale and divide it by the total units. All right. And that's going to give you an average price to use. All right. So we got these 4 different methods. Does anyone have an idea which one is used the most often? Or what industries tend to use which ones? I already told you about specific ID, so.
Probably like the food industry would use, or grocery stores would use first in, first out.
Yep, thank you. Anybody else?
No, I was thinking FIFO as well. I've seen that pretty often.
Okay. All right, well, FIFO is the most commonly used, and I will continue to show you why. However, let me ask you this question. When you go into a grocery store, and several of you guys are pretty young, so I'm going to guess you might not know the answer to this, but I think a couple of you will. Do you grab the milk that's in the front with the expiration date of tomorrow, or do you grab the milk that's in the back? If you don't know, the one in the back. Do you grab the bananas that are turning brown, or do you grab the greener bananas that are still getting ready to ripen? Or the squishy grapes, or the grapes that look good? So you can't see my face right now, but I'm laughing. So my question is, can you make people buy first in, first out in a grocery store?
Yeah.
You can. Was that Adam that just said that? Adam, can you make me buy the milk that's going to expire tomorrow? Nope, I think someone raised their hand. Who raised their hand? Or is
Yeah,
that
I could.
you could make me buy the milk that's going to expire?
I could. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you could.
No.
No, you can't. But they try to, right? They try to encourage us, and they do that by putting the milk first, right? The milk that's going to expire, they put that milk first. My screen just did not do. Did you guys just? Here we go. They by trying to put the milk that's going to expire first. They try to put coupons on meat that's going to expire. They put the bananas that are really ripe in the front, but they can't make us. So the thing is, inventory methods don't matter to how we buy things. Inventory methods are truly just based on how a company wants to record things. So therefore, that's why first in, first out is used the most often. And you remember when I talked to you just a little bit about the international standards that we didn't move to, but they would like the US to go to. One of the changes that would happen is that LIFO would not be something that they could go to. So LIFO would have to go away. A lot of companies use LIFO for tax purposes. That's why they like to use it. Okay, so this is a very simple example. All right. We're going to go ahead and walk through this one on the screen, and then we're going to walk through a little harder one where I'll use a whiteboard. But this one's so simplistic that I'm just going to go ahead and leave it here on the screen that they show us, and then we'll do a different one on a whiteboard. Okay, so they purchased one unit for $70. Then they purchased another unit for $75, and then another unit for $95. They turned around then and sold 2 units for $125. So we have to figure out the cost for each of those items under LIFO, FIFO, and weighted average. Now, specific identification is right on this screen, and with specific ID, they literally have to tell you which ones they sold. So here you can see they sold 70 and 95. So they told you they sold those two, so that means my cost of goods sold is going to be $165 because they told you those were the 2 I sold. That means I only have one left because we only had 3 items. My one that's left is the $75 one. So my ending inventory is $75. Now, remember I told you the other formula that we had was sales minus cost of goods sold gives me gross profit? Here they told us they sold 2 units at $125, which means my sales was $250. So my sales is $250. My cost of goods sold is $165. My gross profit on that sale is $85. So I was able to figure out just with that information my cost of goods sold, because they told me right here, what was left in inventory, because I only had 3 things, and then my gross profit, using specific identification. All right, so that one makes sense? We'll go to the next page. You got a question?
No, I was just answering. It makes sense.
Okay, good. All right, so let's go. Now we're looking at FIFO, LIFO, and weighted average. So, FIFO, LIFO, weighted average. The first thing that you really want to do is always set these up. So you start by the fact that you got 1 unit, and then you purchased another unit. I'm doing them backwards. Hang on, sorry. I just realized the dates were upside down. You want to put them in the order you bought them. So you got 1 unit at $70. Then you bought another unit at $75. And then you bought another unit at $95. All right. So we have a total of 3 units for a total of $240. So this is my cost of goods available for sale, and this is my total units. So if I'm doing FIFO, and I say that I sold 2 units, I start with the first one I bought. So I sold this one, first one in, then I sold this one, first one in, second one in. So that means I sold the $70 one, and I sold the $75 one. Which those, again, I told you the math was pretty easy. So my cost of goods sold was $145. If I then want to know what my ending inventory was, well, I don't have to do much math because there's only one item left. It's $95. But I could subtract it from my cost of goods available for sale. Whoops, I could subtract my 145 and get 95. And then the last thing, gross profit. Remember, we had sales minus cost of goods sold. Gross profit. So my sales is still $250. My cost of goods sold is $145. So my gross profit is now $105. So that is using FIFO.
I'm sorry, where did the 250, do you mean the 240? Where did the 250 come
The
from?
250 came from the other page where we sold 2 items.
Oh.
Yep,
Okay, gotcha.
for $125. Now, if you set it up, because when you do a FIFO problem, you're almost always going to do a LIFO problem and a weighted average problem. So if you set it up right, now that we're done with this, we can erase just a little bit of it and use it for LIFO. All right? So does everybody have what I have written down there? Can I erase it? Silence is golden. So when I go ahead and erase, I'm just going to erase those numbers. I'm going to erase right here. And then I'm going to erase right over here because I need the room to work. And now we're going to do LIFO. So LIFO says we start with the last one that we bought. So that means the last one in is the first one out. So I have 95 costs, and then I sold another one at 75 because I sold 2 units. So my cost of goods sold is 160. Now, I know my last one, the only one left is 70, but I added wrong. This should be 170. Right? Yeah, sorry. This should be 170. I can't subtract or add, whichever way you want to look at it. This should be 70. There you go. 170. And then we come up here to gross profit. And my gross profit is 80. So same thing, we just had to move it to the bottom. All right, and now the last one. So we come up here and erase this. And just erase this. All right, the last one is a little different. We have to now use the weighted average. And remember, I said that when we're doing this, we take the cost of goods available for sale divided by total units. So, cost of goods available for sale divided by total units is 240 divided by 3 equals 80. So my cost of goods sold is going to be 80 times 2, or 160, because I sold 2 units. My ending inventory then is going to be 80 times 1, because I have 1 unit left, or 80. And my gross profit is going to be 90. Cost of goods sold, cost sales minus gross profit. How's that sound? Ready to do a harder one?
Nope.
No? How about just a little bit harder?
Let's do it.
All right. Now these are all worked out here. If you don't like my writing. And then this kind of summarizes just a little bit about the methods to come back to. This is the problem we're going to work. All right. This is the problem that we're going to work. But I'm going to go to a whiteboard and I'm going to rewrite this. So don't worry, you're going to be able to see everything. Okay. Okay. So when you have a problem, the first thing that you're going to want to do is what I showed you before, is you want to start with what you have. So we have beginning inventory of 10 units at $7. And that's a dollar sign. It's $7. So that gives us a cost of $70. Then we purchased, I'm just going to put a P, we purchased 30 units at $8, which is $240. And then we had another purchase of 10 units at $10, which is $100. They then went on to tell us that we sold 35 units. Right? That's all they said. You sold 35 units. They didn't tell us how much. So we're not going to worry about gross profit. So if we total this, we have 50 units at $410. And we know that we should have 15 units left in ending inventory because we sold 35 units. And we know that because they told us. All right, and I'm telling you. Okay, so we're not going to do specific identification. We're only going to do FIFO, LIFO, and weighted average. So the first one we're going to do FIFO. And we sold 35 units. So what are we going to do first? Who knows what we're going to do first?
We're gonna start by selling the ones that were $7 and then move our way to $8.
Exactly. So we're going to take 10 units at $7. Now, we sold 35. So do we need to take all 30 of those $10 or $8 units? If I did this, is that going to be too many?
Yeah.
Yep. So I only want to take 25 of them, which will be $200. Because 10 plus 25 is 35 units, and that's how many I sold. Plus, that leaves me, and I'm going to cross these out, that leaves me 5 left, which added to that last purchase of 10 means I have 15 in ending inventory, which is what I need to have. So if I add these two together, that gives me a cost of goods sold of $270. Now the other item I need to know is how much is my ending inventory worth? What is that 15 worth? Now there's two ways you can do it. The hard way and the easy way. I like the easy way. I take that 270, I subtract it from my cost of goods available for sale, and I get 140. But you could also come up here, and I'm going to do blue, and take 10 times 10 and 5 times 8 and get the same thing. But the more inventory you have, the bigger pain in the butt that would be. So why not just subtract it from your cost of goods available for sale? All right, does that make sense? Enough sense that we can go on to LIFO? That's a confident silence. All right, so what are we going to do with LIFO? What are we going to do different?
Do the last one first.
Thank you. We're going to do the last one first. We're going to start at 10, which happens to be the same number. 10 at $10. And then we're going to do the same thing because it happens to be the same number. 25 at 8. And now we got 300. Come up here. This is 110. One of the important things with doing this is setting it up, because if you had it set up neatly, it really helps you do the problem. And then weighted average. Remember, you take the cost of goods available for sale, 410. You divide it by the number of units, 50. And you get 8.2. Then you take your 8.2 times the number of units you sold, and you get 287. Subtract it, and you get 123. Now, one thing you can always look for, weighted average when you're doing a problem. Now, keep this in mind, a company's only going to do one of these. But when you're doing your problem, weighted average should always be between FIFO and LIFO, because you're taking an average of the two. It doesn't mean you did it right, but if for some reason weighted average was 310, you know you did it wrong. It has to be between the two. All right. We're going to